Do my eyes deceive me? Or is that a drop in Lakecoin? What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, doing to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. Here's another fun fact. Here we are to do a breakdown and review of chapter 233 of Four Knights of the Apocalypse, which it blows my mind in a couple different ways, and it doesn't help that I may or may not have had a half a heart attack in the live reaction, which you should get over on Patreon. Well, I was wondering about the members on $3 a month. But let's just say things happen in this chapter that was not expected to happen in a good way, and it also reinforces some things in a bad way. But it's a lot, and there's a whole theory that I didn't even think. This is what happens when you disengage from the community for 2 weeks and you forget to review a chapter. Then you have to go back in and essentially catch up on community lore after recording a live reaction just to make sure you don't miss anything for the review. Yeah, apparently, we were in a very interesting scenario with these mysterious knights from a faraway land who may just be a little bit more than comp, if you know what I'm talking about. But we have a lot to talk about, so let's not waste any more time. Let's hop right into chapter 233, The Mysterious Assassins. This is very hilarious to me, the idea that all the rest of the knights are just tiny little bees as they're being carried by the big bad wolf that is Lance. I know he's a fox, but still, it is pretty accurate. Be a shame if someone could, I don't know, actually contest with Lance. But we'll see. But with that being the case, hopping into the chapter itself, we are entirely with the Knights this chapter. I don't think, and with us being entirely with the Knights, let me lay down an idea. I don't think we're probably going to have a cut back to Leonis or the main world for a good while. I think we've done a lot there. We've cut away from the Four Knights for a long time. And while it is nice to have it on me and keep it on me at all times, it is also nice to know that we're probably not going to get a good cutback. One of my main things that I do love about Nakaba Suzuki and his works are the character dynamics, and it was a very short time period, if barely any time at all, that we got all the Four Knights together. So I'm glad we are getting time with just them as them. Don't get me wrong, I love the extended cast. You know how much I glaze Ballin. You know how much I glaze Nasians. You know how much you want to talk about a character arc. I used to not really like Anne, or no, I was neutral on Anne, that didn't really like Anne, now I really, really like Anne. So you know how much I glaze Anne. You know how much I glaze the Donners. You know how much I actually genuinely do miss Sylvan. I know what it is. It truly is that absence makes the heart grow fonder kind of thing. Same thing with the way I felt about Hawk. But finding out he was literally the second strongest thing in creation or strongest thing. I don't know. Maybe Hawk, maybe third, depending on how we interpret this. But regardless, there's a lot. There's a lot. And it's hot and popping in terms of characters on the side that aren't part of our main crew that I do want to see more dynamics. I still wish we got to see Lance and Ball interact. I love to see Lance try to hit Ball with a full-scale Shining Rodent and do nothing. And Lance be like, what? I want to see interactions like that. I would love to see. Well, to be fair, notably Tristan doesn't have any dead family members, and neither does Gawain technically. So we couldn't really get many interesting magic interactions with Gareth, and Lance hasn't lost anybody just yet. Who knows if Nakaba will actually commit to taking his daddy away? I highly doubt it. But regardless, that is another thing I do want to talk about. There's a theory. There are multiple theories going on now about the state of Kath, the state of Bond, and how all this is going to work. But with it being the case, I am happy that we are getting an extended section with just the Knights to let them actually, coexist. Of course, we still have, or maybe had, but still have a massive narrative balancing issue where ultimately Lance being so giga amazing, perfect, strong, legendary, handsome, strapped, and juicy does kind of I'm not gonna say invalidate, but does basically make the rest of the Knights redundant. And unfortunately, the nature of their journey that they're on so far only reinforces that, especially with the idea that we kind of currently, even, and as I looked through the community, I was out this was something that I really wanted to see, especially after the Leonis fight ended with Kath. I wanted to see what the general pulse of the community was for us not really having a main antagonist. It did feel like I wasn't exactly sure what the vibes were going to be. Personally, since Nakaba hasn't really, my faith in Nakaba's cookage outside of character stuff and design work has kind of gone down a bit, so I'm not exactly sure how Nakaba's even gonna function without a solid main overarching antagonist. It's gonna be the first time he's done that since ever, right? I don't think there's a point. I mean, I guess technically Cass still is the main villain, but in terms of every single arc had an overarching main villain, even if we just didn't know who it was. at the time. And who knows, that may be the same case here, where we do already have a new overarching main villain, but we just don't know them. But still, we're in a very weird spot. And it feels like the community is also, like, because of how, like, unorthodox this is, no one exactly knows. I've seen a whole bunch of ideas. One idea I'll talk about a little bit more as we get further into this. But, with it being the case, we see that Percy says, sure is lonely. We keep walking and walking and walking, but there's nothing here. And we see Gawain say, this is what Camelot's likely supposed to look like. Now, that's an interesting statement. And I'll even say Tristan's statement before I go fully into this, like, down this little rabbit hole. It's back to what it was, now that the hopes of those who built the illusion are gone. It's interesting that he phrases it as a question more than a statement, but Gawain's statement is what sticks with me. And there's going to be a later statement about what happened. And in fact, you know, I'll read a little bit further and I'll talk about, like, the weird world building this does. And, like, how it doesn't, because we just don't know how, like, the rest of the realms are affected, but kind of, like, there's weird implications with this. But, with it being the case, we see them establish that, and we see it's Gawain floating along, Percy walking, taking up the rear, Sin, or Lance leading the way, as Tristan walks in the middle. But we see that Percy says, as they walk through this gloomy, dark precipice of a canyon, between two peaks, unironically, this in particular, I couldn't remember it in the live reaction, but now I do remember it. This reminds me of the two, like, that split mountain from Breath of the Wild. Y'all know much about I haven't touched Breath of the Wild in, like, years now at this point. As much as I used to obsess over that game. And still, we'll probably occasionally pick it up to play it. You know, it's been so long. But my point is, there's, like, a split mountain range in there. Not even mountain range, just, like, there's a mountain that's cut down the middle. Seemingly enough by a river, I think. I forget what the lore reason is for why it's literally seemingly cut in half. That's what this reminds me of. But Percy makes a comment to sort of wrap up this whole idea of, hey, Camelot looks a little bit different now. Percy says, it was so bright not so long ago. And Tristan says, what dreary weather this is. And yeah, it's perfect for your mom who's in a coma right now. But specifically, the implication here that I do want to address and point out is the idea that Camelot, at its base, without the gaslighting, gatekeeping, girl bossing manipulation, right? Without Cath's influence, is dreary. And, like, functional, clearly. Notably, Camelot did not spontaneously explode now that Cath has been, at least temporarily, indisposed, right? Yeah, he was reduced down to nothing, he had all the chaos force beaten out of him, or beaten viciously, and then he was sealed away in an eternal nightmare, but we know Gulthur. That ain't gonna last forever. But Camelot didn't just explode once all the people were ripped out, all the hopes of illusion are gone. It's still there, but notably, it's like, it almost went down like a Kingdom Heartsian approach, where the stars blinked out of the sky, seemingly enough. Like, I don't know what they mean, like, what Percy's comment in particular, right? The idea that it was so bright not so long ago. Were there multiple stars? We do know in a realm like Onforn, right? Which specifically, I wouldn't even argue is built off the hopes and dreams of anybody, because, you know, that's like a torture place. That place had, like, a massive starry night sky. So, like, does that place just have no stars now? Like, how does that work? I don't know. You know me, I'm a power scaler. I can't help but look deep into it. So I'm intrigued at the idea that the environment itself, like, fundamentally changes with Cath's absence, but doesn't entirely disappear. And the reason I'm interested in this is because I believe, someone explained this to me in a comment, Arthur was in control for a little bit. Arthur seemingly did create Camelot, at least at its foundations. It was Cath who came in and went, and then jacked the whole thing up. But it is very interesting, and a good note for Arthur's character. That's a little character this guy had. I'm kidding. But But regardless, it's a good point for Arthur's character that when you strip away the veneer and the illusion of Camelot, that Cath specifically, presumably being influenced by Arthur and Chaos to actually care for humanity at least a little bit, it's very dreary. It's very functional, and it's here, but it doesn't have that, like, bright, everlasting light of hope that Arthur once wanted to instill all those years ago, right? One of the main things I was really interested in, when at least I thought Arthur was still actually the main antagonist, that wasn't Cath, was the idea that Arthur looked at the world as it was, and then thought about his experiences, maybe went through some more off-screen, and came to the conclusion that, yeah, the real world just isn't good enough. I can't do this. The only way I can truly make the people in my world, the people I care about genuinely, you know, only Cath, the people I care about genuinely in my real world, in this world, care and be happy, is if I create them a lie, because the truth is nothing beautiful, right? And I believe, especially with the end of, I believe it's Cursed by Light, which has Arthur like sadly looking over the buried graves of everybody, which seems to imply that one, Camelot didn't exist yet at that point, and two, it was still Arthur. I don't know. There's also a hot debate on whether or not the Arthur at the end of Cursed by Light is Cath, or like was retconned into being Cath slash actually wasn't Cath. I don't know. It's weird, but assuming that was actually the real Arthur, he did presumably create all of Camelot in a very dour and sad mental state, even if he was seemingly, like, oh yay, everlasting kingdom, everything's great. He probably didn't fully sink into him what Cath is saying of like, dude, every single person you love and care for is gone. Your entire kingdom reduced to ashes, right, brother. I was gonna do it myself if the sins didn't beat me to it. So it is interesting to see Camelot seemingly reflect the mental state that Arthur was in when he initially created it. And now, obviously, we've seen Arthur in the modern day. He looks older. He's still missing the arm. Like, he doesn't look the happiest. So if he still is, presumably, like, the base acting force, maintaining Camelot as it is, as he's the one who created it, assuming it wasn't Cath 18 years ago who created Camelot, then that's actually a really interesting thing to look at and to see how the creation reflects the mind state, the existence of the creator at the time. I like that visual storytelling. If that's meant to be that. I may be reading too deep into it, but it is interesting that all the false lights, all the hopes are gone, and now you're just left with the grim, gloomy, dark reality of the situation. And now if you're wondering, because I mentioned this earlier, what implications does it have on power scaling? I think it's still kind of none. I mean, like, unless we really believe that all realms lost all their stars once Cath was indisposed, meaning that he was only maintaining their existence. I think Cath maintaining the existence of multiple celestial bodies after presumably creating them in an instant and them instantly disappearing the second he leaves, that's still a really, really good feat. I'm just not sure how that does scale, right? Like, for example, what's a good example? Like, I can hold this pencil like this. I didn't create the pencil, so it isn't like a full perfect analogy, but I can hold this pencil like this. And I can hold my arm up like this for a while. But, admittedly, as time passes, more and more of it, my arm's gonna get tired. But, notably, the difference between me and a Cath is one, I didn't create the pencil, and two, Cath was holding up creation. And once again, we don't know if this really did affect all creations, it was just creations that may have had people in them once, like this area. But, Cath was holding up creation passively while he was doing literally everything else that he was doing. So it still is a very impressive feat to me. It is, I don't think it downscales anything at all. If that's what you're wondering, I don't think it really downscales anything at all. It just is an interesting world building / character detail. But with it being the case, we see Percy ask, hey, Gawain, are we close to where Merlin is yet? And it is funny to see this text box point at Gawain, even though it's clearly Percy meant to be speaking. But regardless, we see Gawain say, don't ask me. I sure don't know. And we finish first. What? Wait! We're just not aimlessly wandering around. Pencil can't read to save his life. Wait! We're not just aimlessly forging ahead, are we? Tristan asks, and Gawain goes, what do you want? All my mom said was that the key was inside me. And I, like many others, do really like hearing, even if I still, I don't think I ever will. I think because I've always felt like negatively neutral, it's not hate, so my ability to passively grow soft on things I hate hasn't really affected Merlin as much, because I still don't really like the character mainly. But here's the thing, I think I'm more so indifferent to Merlin as a character. I just don't like her narrative usage. I think that's my main thing. I don't like Merlin's function and role in the narrative more than I don't like Merlin as a character. I think that's where it comes in. But thing here is, to be honest, this is really, really bad for how the Sins handled the entire Cath fight, the entire Garden fight. Like, notably, I've already been ragging on it, and I'm gonna rag on it again. Shocker, I'm gonna rag on it again, soon enough. I've already ragged on the idea of the Sins really, really, really poorly plotting out how they were gonna deal with what they thought was King Arthur. Sure, Merlin didn't tell them it was Cath the entire time. Maybe she felt like she couldn't, but not only do you think Gotha would have been able to, like, deduce that based on how Merlin was talking about it, but also, two, even if it was, the second they found out it was Cath, they should have, wild out a bit more. But I do genuinely think, with seemingly character, I don't know, maybe we're gonna see Gawain's Sacred Treasure, real Sacred Treasure, hopefully it's not just Lita again, next chapter. Maybe we're gonna see Tristan's real Sacred Treasure again, next chapter, even though he seemingly only has Dragon Handle, / the Percival Sword, and Mael right now. Who knows, maybe he has this maybe he has his true Sacred Treasure, and maybe Lance has his true Sacred Treasure. But right now, it feels, the more and more chapters that pass, the more and more it feels like the Sins just didn't think. They didn't even begin to conceptualize anything beyond, oh, we're gonna take all the people and fight Kath. Or fight Arthur. No thought process on how you're gonna liberate Chaos from Arthur. No thought process on how you would like deal with Arthur if he just, tried to destroy the planet outside of Hawk showing up at the park. Like, there was no thought. And one of the biggest reasons there's no thought is, you mean to tell me you had direct and easy access to who is called last chapter, and just seems to be the strongest man in creation, right? That's what Lance is. Let's not tickle our toes and tickle our toes and wiggle our nose. Let's not wiggle our toes and tickle our nose at this, right? Lance is presumably the strongest being there is, possibly and probably even stronger than Big Hawk, Big Mild, Big Daddy. Like presumably, just considering Lance's insane scaling already. The idea that was pointed out, this was pointed out to me by a commenter from last review. The idea that Lance already, as like a 12-year-old, before properly even obtaining all the Lady Lake's magic, was stated to, in a few years, surpass the Nemesis attack from the end of Seven Deadly Sins. Yeah, that was then. Now he has infinite magic, and it's been multiple years. He's definitely still stronger than presumably literally everything else. Bon, who has the most durable body in creation, mind you. Kath never damages him outside of hacks. I want you to realize all the damage that Bon takes in the Kath battle, never comes from Kath. Kath could never damage Bon outside of haxing him. But that being said, they had Lance. Lance, with Hazy Moon, seemingly enough, is a really, really, really dumb, stupid crack counter to the Chaos magic. And all that. Probably even the time magic. Would have been dumb, stupid, crazy to go against Kath if he was just there. You don't even have to include the rest of the knights. Leave the rest of the knights to their own devices. But you could have had Lance. And even then, I say leave the rest of the knights to their own devices. But I'm sorry. I believe it's pretty solid at this point that Gawain is at least go through level. At least go through level. At least at a low ball. Because Gotham's kind of buns, stat-wise. Hacks-wise, he's obviously better, but still, probably kind of buns stat-wise. Gawain could have been useful. And then, for the whole healing thing, man, would it sure have been nice to have another Giga Crack Goddess healer and a guy who literally wields life spirits. But you mean to tell me, instead of actually plotting around having these guys there to help out, you took their fodder, well, mostly fodder, except my Glorious Handsome King Ballin, but their mostly fodder side cast and took them with you? And said, yeah, you're going to stay here and fight with us. Why? Why not? If the plan was to start a war specifically against Kath, why would you not use your best resource? It's just so dumb. It's so dumb. And the idea, like, it'd be one thing if it's that idea I mentioned last review. If they had actual, like, pressing time limits. If there was like a point where they're like, okay, we have to do this now. Like, the portal's going to close and it's going to close forever. Like, just give some reason why they had to leave. Because the more and more these chapters progress, the more and more I'm like, Mel, you were stupid. You were dumb. Lance, you're stupid. You were dumb. Like, everyone gets stupider the more and more I find out about the scenarios of this. Because they don't have a goal. They're just aimlessly walking around because Gawain was told, oh, the key's inside you. Well, let it be me. Like, obviously it's going to work out because they encountered the mysterious sides of the chapter. But specifically, in the context of the information they had at the time, it would have just been better to stick around and then make sure Kath is gone. Or at least incapacitated. Then you could explore all of Camelot without having to worry about him, at least for a little bit, man. Like, why like, they're just so stupid. But, with it being the case, we see Gawain and say, okay, you two, come on. Think of it as a fun little hike. And, Gawain, you're literally fly. I don't want to hear from you. But we see, oh, wait, actually, no, that's Percival. Sorry, that's my bad, Percival. But, Gawain, you're literally flying. Don't complain. As they go, it's not fun at all. And we see, it's because he's in Sin mode. I keep calling him Sin. But we see Lance say, keep it down, you guys. And Tristan actually goes, huh? What is it? An enemy attack? And Lance goes, likely so, yes. And Percy admits, I don't sense anyone's magic besides our own. Which is a very interesting idea there, bucko. I do wonder. Oh, speaking of things, because I will forget about it. One of the theories I saw is that Kath is alive in Bond, right? Obviously, with how he didn't execute Bond on screen, and the idea that he did set up a defense force back at Benwick, and on top of that, he didn't just set up a defense force at Benwick, he also, Nagabo Suzuki also set up the idea of Bond having the strongest crazy body, and did give us the flash forward from Guinevere of like, Bond's gonna die to Lance. I wonder what context that could be in. It is entirely possible that Kath invaded Bond's body, or was at least attempting to in order to take him over, and then use his basically crazy, cracked, indestructible body, rather than this weird, I guess, like, his true form is the tiny ball cat, but, like, essentially Kath may have possessed Bond. That is one of the big theories that's running around. And with that being one of the big theories, a lot of people are assuming that Lance will still reach that point, right? The sequence of events like what we saw in her dream with Kaleidoscope was Lance has Sacred Treasure, Lance slays Bond sealing the big Leonis fight after Arthur declares that this is the finally time I swear I settle with you sins, which we did see, and then Elizabeth goes goddess mode, and then Bond is dead, I think. Or Bond dies like before Elizabeth goes goddess mode. That clearly didn't happen in this timeline. But maybe that instance where we see Lance have to kill Bond with the Sacred Treasure, maybe that's it? Maybe that's it? I don't exactly know. But with it being the case, we see that naturally Gwen's like, okay, it's not to say magic, but how about the presence of light spirits, Percival? And Percival goes, well, there are those around, yeah, but I can only vaguely sense them. And that's actually very, very interesting, very, very impressive. I must once again remind you, we are 233 chapters deep in this narrative, and we still know basically nothing about light spirits. And, like, where they come from and who created them. Like, don't get me wrong, not every single thing needs a creator. Usually there are creators in universes anyway. But, like, man, boy is that crazy that we are this deep into the manga and, like, we still don't even truly properly understand what our main character. This isn't like a main secondary character and it came to like a Tristan or Gawain or like, no, like our MC guy we've been following since chapter 1. He's out here being like, whoa, that's crazy. That I can't sense them like this. It's very interesting that Percy is so knowledgeable, is so intelligent, but obviously he just doesn't necessarily speak about it or show it too much because presumably it's not that fun for him. But with it being the case, we see that Gawain admits it's like someone's magically hiding their magic force. You did well to spot it, Lancelot. And of course he did. Because he's the untouchable, undamageable, legendary goat. He would never, ever, right? Never take damage. That's a pipe dream of a pipe dream. Let's keep going. As we see that Lance admits, I was just thinking about the prediction from Tristan's grandpa. All that talk about fighting weird people around gloomy places throughout Camelot. And we see, like clockwork, now that they've essentially been noticed and outed, 4 arrows rain down. They all lunge in and then slash at all the individuals. Everyone manages to dodge, except for Percy, who does actually take a little bit of damage, which presumably heals off, because I don't think we see the damage again for the rest of the chapter. But we see that this individual doesn't just take the initiative and attack once with the opening, but the invisible archer just keeps on firing. They keep going, causing the knights to tap away in order to at least either get some cover or at least reposition. And then we see an individual behind Percy who's backdashing away from the onslaught, and someone attacks him. I wonder what this could be. I wonder. Willikers, fellas. I do wonder. What is your type? Call most of outside as I be. But essentially, this person whips out Scattered Rose, a blade style that Percy himself is naturally familiar with. Almost as if his wife? Question mark? What are they? Actually, like, I mean, I assume they're just significant others, but, like, what are Percy and Anne? And, like, I know they're a throuple, right? Like, I get that, but, like, what are they? I have no idea. But, essentially, Percy recognizes the sword style as one of Anne's sword styles, and this will feed into the theory that I've seen basically run through the community. But we see that as they bob and weave, they seemingly get a message that causes them to flank out, and then Percival does stagger knock them back. Then we see, from a certain point of view, this looks like an eyeball. I don't know what it is with me. But with it being the case, we see... What do we see here? Oh, the fit reveal. I was about to say, what, like, for some reason, when I was staring at this, I was like, I see an eyeball. Why do I see an eyeball? But no, we don't get to see an eyeball. We see Percy rocking a fit! Yo, young man, who said you could, let's give multiple levels of glaze to this, right? Let's give multiple levels of glaze to this. It ain't just the fit. It's the pose he strikes with the fit. Hold on. It's literally so I can't even fit it all in frame. Hold on. Literally, still can't fit it all. Like, he feeling like that. And he does low-key got on. This, already, in like the few times we get him in this chapter, this may genuinely be my favorite Percival fit. It feels like it has a good balance of literally everything. Obviously, I get why he doesn't have the hat, and I think the hat actually doesn't work for him anymore because he's so much bigger now. So like this genuinely goes crazy. But we do see Percy does knock them back with the Force Circular, and he draws it, and he goes, "If you're still siding with the fake King Arthur, I'm not gonna go easy, or I'm really not gonna go easy." Which we know he probably still is. Percy could still presumably one-shot every single individual here with "Habba-dabba," and then whatever that spell is, and immediately annihilate them. But he will not do that. And we see that this person says, "You dare call King Arthur a faker, even though you are the true fakes." This whole thing is weird. I'll get into what the common fan... Well, I'm not going to say the common fandom, but at least the theory that was running rampant on Reddit. Thank the heavens I did not check Reddit, or else I would have spoiled myself for the last 2 chapters. Horrible. But, will be the case. We see that they claim that the 4 knights themselves are the fakers. I'll make you eat those words. But regardless, we see that Tristan goes, huh? True fakes? Who would we be posing as? Which is a very interesting point. Because, like, why are they calling them the fake 4 knights? Like, who told them that? Like, if it were, like, unless a certain theory is true, like, why would they think these are the fake 4 knights? Oddly specific, unless they were told by somebody, but we know Kath is gone. And I don't think he told these people. I mean, who knows? Once again, they're on the way to Merlin, so maybe Merlin told them. But we see that Tristan looks up and sees a rumble in a tumble in the sky. But Gawain actually manages to buff up and shoulder check this individual before they can actually reach Tristan, who does at least somewhat react in time to grab Dragon Handle. And naturally, we see in Gawain's face are flapping wings. Flapping wings. Goddess clan, right? But I've never seen an angel this. I don't know. A goddess looking the way they do. How intriguing, let's say. And we see, like, Gawain notices the Goddess Clan wings and how tiny they are. Now, there's only 2 of them. So it can't be Nanashi, the only confirmed goddess I believe that we know of works for Camelot. It has to be somebody else. I wonder who it could be. As we see a certain individual on the sidelines watching the whole interaction go down, start to hit a chant real quick. We have this fully masked individual who hits the spirals and then hits the chant. I still don't know what these are. Like, I think I've heard mixed results on whether or not the spells that the mages commonly use, like, actually mean anything. Like, apparently some of them do. Some of them are, like, actual, like, words in Latin. And then sometimes they're gibberish. I'm not sure what this one is. I'm not going to say it, though. But because regardless, as they pull the thing out, Tristan pops the fit. Now, I'll say this. In terms of our 4 knights, the only character to have consistently banger fit after banger fit after banger fit without fail is Lance. Because Lance has only had, like, 2 main fits. Like, you could argue Sin has been fit for Lance, but, like, realistically, dress-wise, Lance had his original sleeveless tank top and baggy pants, which was fire, looking just like his uncle. And he has his current fit, the suit, which also looks fire. But Tristan, outside of me not necessarily liking the banana coloring of his original outfit, Tristan also, he was low-key dropping some heat in terms of what he was actually putting the pen paper on the pitch, if you know what I'm talking about the fit. So, I am more than happy to see that trend continue because this is a banger fit. I do wish there was a little bit more of the demonic integration of it all. Tristan is a character of dualities, about dualities, by dualities. So it's a shame that this armor seemingly doesn't, or at least the fit itself doesn't seemingly acknowledge his demonic side at all. But we do know that, especially in comparison to the goddess side of things, demonic transformations and mutations do, like, take precedent and can infuse themselves with outfits. So I'm hoping when he goes, like, demon mark or something, like, maybe, like, aspects of the elf outfit itself will become dark. Maybe the wings will tinge up. It'd just be neat to see. Because I like that Tristan is a duality character. But how little we focus on that. But with it being the case, he rips off the cloak, pops off the fit, as this person chants up. Note that their arms are entirely covered in tattoos. And these markings. Wonder what that could mean. But regardless, we see Gawain in midair, alongside the person they shoulder checked, shrug, flip, and go away, as Hail of Flame is cast upon Tristan. But naturally, oh no. You cast a magic spell at one of the, what? 2 alive full counter users? 2. I still, like, to this day, I wonder how the heck does physical full counter, like, work from a universe perspective? Did Chandler have that? If I ever do Chandler versus, does he have physical full? Was that a thing? Like, that was, like, it happened. I have no idea. But regardless, we know that's not going to work out in their favor. As Gawain, we kind of get a new spotlight of Gawain's new fit. It's a lot simpler, I'd say, but I do like it. It still has the trademark Escanor Merlin fluff around the neck. The cloak that she wears is now built into the fit itself, which also mutates with her. The coat, like the bottom part of it, seemingly reminds me of like a Santa outfit, ironically enough. I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for is. Like it looks like a fur coat kind of, but just extremely Santa to me. But regardless, out of all the fit reveals, I'd say she has the weakest of the new fits, but still a solid enough fit. And she goes, "If you're good enough to show up in the prophecy, try to entertain me a little, huh?" And she slobber knocks this goddess individual. And notably, they don't seem to do too much damage, but still knock them away. And Tristan naturally is like, "You do realize I'm one of the 2 living full counter users, right?" And uses full counter on the firestorm or the hail of fire. Why do you immediately forget? Yeah, the hail of flame to immediately full counter it. Notably, though, they don't actually do too much damage to the person that they're fighting, right? Like, they take it with basically no problem. How intriguing. But regardless, Tristan hits the full counter, and the goddess individual gets knocked back into a certain someone. This certain someone is invisible, at least at the moment, and it's hiding their presence, and presumably was helping others hide their presences, as they go, "Oh, why'd you have to be thrown right at me, huh?" And the goddess individual says, "Sorry, it's not like I meant to." And we see the tattooed individual go, as they cast Blitz Javelin. Now, obviously, Blitz Javelin is a general lightning spell. We've seen multiple characters use it, but, very intriguing. Blitz Javelin. I wonder. But regardless, we see Blitz Javelin get launched, and naturally, of course, we still have the same full counter user who reacts to the Blitz Javelin and then full counters it right back. Full counter! And Tristan just reflects the attack back, because of course he does. Why would he not? And then we see all the individuals around him all turn to him. Obviously, we don't see the goddess individual, but the individual with the Anne-esque fighting style turns and watches, and we see this person who's tattooed up go, "What is this? These are fakers. Why are they so strong?" Which, once again, I do genuinely wonder. We're gonna get it. We know we're gonna get it. But I'm interested on the context of, like, what they think of the 4 Knights and how they know they're fake. Like, who told them? Because I do agree with the comic reading consensus. I don't think these are Kath's minions. I highly doubt that. Especially considering a thing that they say. But, with it being the case, we see that Percival, who's seemingly in chibi mode for some reason. I don't know why. It's hilarious to see him in chibi mode. And it looks like Gawain just was not drawn with her cape here. But regardless, Percival goes, "Not too fun to be called fakes all day." And we see Tristan point out and go, "Yeah, tell me who you are, people. Tell me who you people are." And we see a person, unnoticed, seemingly walk up on the 3 Knights. And they have a sword in hand, gloves on, and are pretty casually fitted up with an Oni mask. And we see they completely ignore a certain Fox, just standing by or farming himself, as they go, "We are the Knights of the Holy Grail. Our mission is to make the deformed right again. Now!" Big bodacious things here. Do I talk about? I think we'll talk about it now, but also a thing I want to talk about first. The Holy Grail. A very, very interesting thing to bring up. Notably, obviously, the Holy Grail has now become basically a part of Arthurian mythos in general. Originally, it wasn't there, though. I think the Holy Grail was just the Grail for the longest time. It wasn't necessarily holy, but the holy aspect of it does play into, like, the Christianization aspect of Arthurian legend that has happened to the mythos over time. Heck, remember, Lancelot himself isn't actually even in the original Arthurian legends. He's a later invention. He's, like, basically a fanfic character, which explains why he's always so cracked in all the stories he shows up in. But regardless, interesting that we're running into the Knights of the Holy Grail. And there are 4 of them, seemingly enough. I don't know. We saw 4 at the end of the last chapter. There are only 4 that show up in this chapter. So there are 4 Knights of the Holy Grail, just as there are 4 Knights of the Apocalypse. Also very interesting to know that there weren't just 4 Knights of the Holy Grail. Like in the original Arthurian mythology, once again, this is all coming from my consistent rewatches of all these Sarcastic Productions videos. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this. I believe, like, there was a bunch of knights that went after the Holy Grail. Way more than just 4. But these are these 4 that are specifically, I'm not sure if they're Knights of the Holy Grails and they're seeking it, or they're Knights of the Holy Grail that they're guarding it. I'm assuming Holy Grail in this case may not actually be a literal Holy Grail, but it may be Arthur, right? They're guarding Arthur from anyone who would try and take him, as this presumably is the last line of defense before Merlin? Maybe? I don't know. It's still very, very vague on what we're doing here. But this character pulls up. And obviously, if you've seen me, like, hinting at, what's this theory that the community has come to? Apparently, the comic sense is going around. And it's specifically, I'd say it's because of this guy's clan member. This one's really vague just because of like their build and their face being completely hidden and their fighting style just being magic, and we've seen multiple different mages from demonic mages to human mages, mainly those two. I don't think we've seen many other mages, but still, regardless, it isn't this one that really feeds into it. But this person with the goddess wings, right? They are an anomaly. Unless we think Nanashi laid pipe sometime in Camelot, there shouldn't be another goddess running around, considering, you know, they aren't even allowed in the realm naturally. But they're here, and notably the fact that their wings are so tiny and small, and there are only two of them. The idea that these guys are like the kids of the Four Knights from the future seems to be very, very popular, and it's because of these weird little details like this. Not only did this individual use Scattered Rose, which clearly enough is a Anne fighting style, but the counter argument to that is arguably that, like, well, we know that Anne was trained by her mother, who was trained in Camelot, so maybe there's just the Camelot fighting style that's passed down. But it is oddly specific that it isn't just, oh, this person used Scattered Rose. Seems very Anne reminiscent. On top of that, this person used Scattered Rose, and even Percy notes that this sword style is very similar. Then we have this person with the tiny goddess wings. We do presumably know, especially with the way that these wings are popping out of the back, that these aren't biological wings, they're spawned wings, right? There's no holes in the armor for this, implying that just like Elizabeth and just like Tristan, this person doesn't have biological wings. They have wings that they manifest because they aren't a full goddess clan member. Wonder who that could be. We know that Tristan and Isolde are supposed to get together, and presumably they have a kid. And this person does seem at least relatively tall. On top of that, like I said, this guy doesn't add all too much to it because he's masked up. But you could argue this is like Gawain analog / reference, if only for the fact that, well, they're using magic. That's Gawain's kind of whole thing. They don't seem to have too big of a physical build, but they do have muscles and have gains. But the real final nail in the coffin of these possibly being future kids of the Four Knights somehow transposed or transferred through time, through some weird chaos, timey-wimey stuff, is not the idea of the Knights of the Holy Grail, but it's actually the interaction that follows after this individual and introduces themselves as that. It's also interesting that they're all masked in, like, different types of masks. Like, obviously, this seems to be, like, a more wooden mask. We see that the invisible individual just has, like, a big old thing on their head. And, obviously, the user of Scattered Rose has their whole face covered up by a Scattered Rose. The only thing that's weird, though, is that the individual who was invisible, like the fourth of these four knights that doesn't really get too much focus in this chapter, doesn't even get, like, a full proper design, like we had them at the end of last chapter. They seem to be, like, Life Spirit-esque, kind of, sort of. That's weird. If, like, this is meant to be, like, Percy's future kid, but if this is his future kid with Anne, maybe they didn't inherit any Life Spirit powers. But, regardless, we see Lance decide to flex a little bit as he goes from Sin unnoticed to his full Lance state as the person draws their blade. As he says, how about I write this deformity here first? And he immediately swings on this individual. Just straight, yeah, absolutely atomizes the bottom part of their mask. Notably, Lance still does not seem to have a sacred treasure. I'm not going to go too deep into it. I've already complained about how, like, I just feel like they didn't really plan anything at all. I spent most of that in last chapter. I won't go that here. But he didn't seem to have a sacred treasure, so he just swings out with his fist. And it does seem to shatter the mask. And that's it, mind you. Because notably, this person, this individual, this seeming, I call them the leader, just because they showed up last and they're going out crazy. But they don't even stagger. They aren't even knocked back from getting their jaw cracked open, get their jaw tested. And they, in fact, hit Lance. So they get jaw checked, right? They get jaw checked by Lance, which notably, this singular jaw check, this right here, would annihilate some of your favorite friends. This breaks Cell Saga Goku's neck. Arguably, depending on if you realistically should. Lance should probably scale the universal with the whole absorbing the entire Lady of the Lake thing, right? Right? And like it should just be a thing. So arguably, like, the entire original Z manga, just absolutely atomized by this one hit. Every single character that's not, like, Imagine or a Cell with some crazy regeneration literally dies to this hit right here. But notably, this person doesn't even get staggered. In fact, if they were staggered at all, they take the momentum to leap into the air, fully draw their blade, and kick Lance. And their mask goes fully into the air, but notably will not see their face this chapter, as Lance was genuinely forced to block. Of course, he blocks and takes no damage from the interaction, but still, this is, like, the first time ever that we've seen Lance, actually have to defend himself. That's kind of crazy. But you know what we really haven't seen Lance do? Take damage. And we see that this individual hits a whirl as they land on the ground. They lunge in, still covering their face the entire time, at least for us. They go bap, 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 and Lance is still pretty casual. He was shocked at the fact that he had to block, but then he puts his hands in his pockets, goes a little bit Vegito here, starts bapping away the sword with the kicks, only to get hit with seemingly a think that would be would that be a backflip? I think it's a backflip. But a backflip arcing slash. The individual grabs the top of their mask that's still intact, snags it out of the air, as Lance, takes a hit. And we see, to the genuine horror of Tristan, Gawain, Percy, and me, Lancelot, the strongest being in all creation as far as we know, outside of chaos itself, presumably, took damage for the first time ever. Post his, actually getting the lady. We know he has a scar. He took damage in the past. Like, it's crazy to think. I am quite confident saying Lance has literally never taken damage. So the fact that this individual not only no-sold their attacks, took no visible damage themselves, but also managed to slash Lance and get a little orb moment off as they go, we make the deformed right again. Crazy, juicy, thick, scrumdiddlyumptious little feet right here. Delicioso. And even Lance himself is like, whoa, wait a minute. Now, he's breathing a little heavy here, and one of the commenters from last review did point out, technically, Lance may actually still be hindered by Ant's magic, because he never exactly shut it off. He never exactly told the truth. And Ant's magic only seems to go away when she's, like, knocked out. Not just when she falls asleep, because presumably she fell asleep in the time that it took Lance to get all the way to Benwick, and the magic was still active. Like, it doesn't really make sense, and Lance acknowledges that the magic is active on his entire trip in Benwick. So, seemingly, he is probably still weighed down by Ant's magic. He uses it as, like, a training function and a training tool, and it would also explain why his hair is still, like, relatively flat, even though we know his hair at this point does typically stand up before this. So he may still be weighed down by Ant's magic, but that shouldn't lower his durability, right? Like, oh no, he's struggling a bit more to move. Like, that shouldn't really be a problem in terms of his actual physical stats. So the fact that this is the first character to do damage to Lance is crazy. And this character also feeds into the idea that these may be the future kids of the Four Knights. Specifically because this legit just looks like Guinevere with shorter hair, right? And specifically the way their hair falls actually looks a lot like Lance's, who gets a lot of his hair detailing from his mother. In fact, this person does kind of look like Elaine. And, of course, them actually being powerful enough to do anything to Lance does kind of scale them above literally everything we've seen so far. Like, this character right here, off these interactions alone, probably still is your favorite verse. What's your favorite verse? But still, regardless, crazy feats from this individual. The idea that the kids of the Four Knights would come from the future in order to interact, I mean, it's an interesting idea. I wouldn't be shocked if Nakama did it, because right now we don't, like I mentioned, we don't really have a solid story direction other than, I guess, helping Arthur, I suppose. But still, very interesting scenario. I'm liking that Lance is seemingly finally, and I'll say this, as much as I do love Lance, he was kind of like poorly narratively balanced for an overarching narrative. So I'm glad he actually is. He's not getting nerfed, but he is at least touchable, while presumably still being nerfed and holding back. But still, Lance taking damage goes to show that Lance will actually have comp, at least to some degree. And he did no damage to it. It's not in the exchange, he lost on every level. He couldn't stagger his opponent. He just broke their mask. He himself was staggered. And then while he was able to Vegito kick away a lot of sword swings, he does end up getting hit across the face. So, I would say, very, very good stuff. Of course, the chapter, because of this, on the sheer gall, on the sheer audacity of it all, a W chapter. Like I said, I'm not going to really blame the current scenario on this chapter, like the scenario of how the Sins kind of really come back against Cap. I'm going to make a whole video talking about that. But regardless, a W chapter in of itself. Hope you guys enjoyed the live reaction. Oh, no, the live reaction mode. Hope you guys enjoyed the review. If you made it all the way to the end of the review, please leave the strongest question mark? Like, I mean, I don't know. That's kind of crazy. The strongest question mark in the comment section down below. Well, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to hit that lethal notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, you're going to have a pitch down below. You support me for as well as one no month. Things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as well as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks include the 23-minute live reaction to this very chapter and every other series I review, ad-free reactions to all my videos, early ad-free access to all my videos, early ad-free access to all my videos, not just here on the main channel, but on the second channel, that called the Jack Shaw, link in the description down below, in the card in the upper right-hand corner. On top of that, I do have a link to my Twitch down below. I stream every Friday, 8 p.m. ES Tizzle. Feel free to roll through. We have a wonderful time over there. On top of that, I do my Ko-Fi down below. If you want to 5 minutes for a short video or 20 minutes for a long video, any means at all, any support is always greatly appreciated. Now, I want to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with a Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our sketch tier members: Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, Astro, Glacier XZ, Zera, J2 May, Buddha Ura, Yuki Ally, Grim, Ollie, The Boy, Corey Watson, Damon Brown, Tim Thomas, Kaving, ORXN, Logan Guzman, Dead Mean, Keon Stewart, Edwin Igbignoba, Straw, Antavius Mitchell, Superflame Zero, Weary Exile, Alex Kenny, Todd, The Practical One, Landon Clapwick, Heath Nelson, CAET, Plant Crone, Brandon Payne, Black Sage, Multi-Batman Superman, Zalims, Joe Bean, Sleepin' John, The Young Family Pastel Pandora, Mo City King DKG, Angeline Bonnet, Akolade Babatunde, at JDog2656, Union Eye, Funny Dude, Athenzi Shear, Sino King, Sheesh King, Aswin Hedi Prasetya, JMB KD, CCC, Enzo, Kitty Liddy, Gerald Harris, Dino, Victor Jacobs, Axis XC, and RTM Gangatron. Then I'd like to give a thank you to our line art tier patrons: A+A, Dread Zoen, Kevin Encarnacion, Lil Kodo, and Sean. Then I'd like to give a thank you to our ink tier members: Shrimpo the Fourth Shrimp 06. And then I'd like to give a thank you to our digital art tier members: J Warrior and AZ Void. And I'd like to give a final thank you to our colored art tier patrons: Joaquin Munoz and Joaquin Munoz.